In 2019, a rooster was put on trial in France. Not a person who owned a rooster, the rooster himself was the center of a real legal battle that made international headlines, split a small island community in half, and eventually changed French law. His name was Maurice, and his crime was simple. He crowed too early in the morning. By the end of this video, you'll understand how one bird ended up at the center of a national debate about who really owns the countryside, why thousands of people rallied behind him, and how his story changed French law for good. Maurice lived with his owner, Corinne Fessot, on the Île d'Oléron, a small island off the Atlantic coast of France. Fessot had lived there for over 3 decades, in a rural area where roosters, tractors, frogs, and all the ordinary sounds of the countryside were just part of daily life. She got Maurice as a chick and named him after her grandfather, expecting he'd simply grow into a quiet backyard bird. Instead, like every rooster on Earth, he did what roosters do. He crowed, sometimes as early as 6:30 or 7 in the morning. For the island's full-time residents, this was completely unremarkable. But Île d'Oléron's population swells from around 22,000 to well over 200,000 every summer, as tourists arrive for the beaches and the quiet countryside charm. And that's exactly where the trouble started. Behind Fessot's property was a house owned by a retired couple who only visited for a few weeks each summer, using it strictly as a vacation home. Every summer, Maurice's crowing woke them up before they wanted to be awake. Eventually, they'd had enough and filed a formal noise complaint. In July 2019, Maurice officially went on trial, accused of being a noise nuisance under French law. This wasn't just a private dispute between two neighbors, it became a symbol. Fessot's neighbors and the town's mayor, Christophe Essuer, publicly sided with her and Maurice. The case tapped into growing tension across rural France between longtime countryside residents and newcomers, sometimes labeled neo-rurals, people who move to or visit the countryside expecting postcard peace and quiet, without understanding that rural life has always come with its own soundtrack, just not the kind of noise a city has. Thousands of people signed a petition nicknamed Save Maurice, turning the rooster into a stand-in for an entire way of life that felt like it was under threat. Fessot put it simply, he is a rooster, roosters crow, that's the countryside, and it deserves protecting. In September 2019, the court delivered its ruling, and Maurice won. The judge in Rochefort rejected the noise complaint entirely, and in a twist that made headlines around the world, ordered the couple who filed the complaint to pay damages, around €1,000, to Fessot. The rooster wasn't just cleared. His accusers ended up paying for bringing the case in the first place. The mayor called the verdict common sense and said it was about preserving French tradition against outsiders who simply didn't understand it. Maurice wasn't an isolated case. Around the same time, similar disputes were popping up across rural France. In the Landes region, a woman who had raised ducks for 36 years was taken to court by a newly arrived neighbor, annoyed by the quacking, and that case was also thrown out. Vacationers in Provence tried to get rid of the cicadas buzzing on their property, insects that had been part of the Provençal summer soundscape for generations. And tragically, not every dispute ended peacefully. In the Ardèche region, a rooster named Marcel was killed by a neighbor furious over his crowing. The case sparked outrage. Over 100,000 people signed a petition demanding justice, and the man responsible received a 5-month suspended prison sentence. These cases became such a powerful symbol of the divide between city and rural life that French lawmakers decided to act. In January 2021, the French Senate gave final approval to a new law protecting what officials called the sensory heritage of the French countryside, meaning the sounds and smells that have always been part of rural life. Roosters crowing, cowbells ringing, tractors rumbling at dawn, even the smell of manure drifting from a nearby farm. The law amended France's environmental code to formally recognize these sounds and smells as part of the country's shared heritage. Minister Joël Giraud, who oversaw rural affairs, told lawmakers that living in the countryside means accepting certain nuisances, and said the law's goal was preventing exactly the kind of disputes that made Maurice's trial necessary. Senator Pierre-Antoine Lévy, who helped write the bill, called it a real tool for local mayors, so future disputes could be mediated before they ever reached a courtroom. It's worth being precise about what the law actually does. It doesn't list specific protected sounds, and it doesn't attach automatic penalties. What it does is give judges firmer legal footing in these disputes, and pushes local governments to formally document their region's rural character, so newcomers have a clearer idea of exactly what they're moving into before a conflict ever starts. Maurice didn't live to see the law he inspired. He passed away at age 6, the summer before the Senate's final vote. When the law passed, Giraud posted a tribute online, calling it a posthumous victory for Maurice the Rooster, a symbol of rural life. A single bird on a small island ended up shaping national policy, not because of anything extraordinary he did, he just crowed the way roosters always have, but because his story captured something people across the entire country understood. Step back, and Maurice's story is really about something bigger than one bird, who gets to define what's normal in a shared space. To the tourists, an early crowing rooster was a nuisance. To Fesso and her neighbors, it was simply the sound of home, the same sound the island had had for generations before any vacation home was built there. French law ultimately came down on the side of tradition, but as cities expand and more people move between urban and rural life, these quiet, everyday conflicts over noise, smells, and space are becoming more common everywhere, not just in France. Maurice just happened to be the case that made headlines. So next time you hear a rooster crowing at dawn somewhere in the French countryside, there's a good chance that sound is now legally protected, all because of one rooster, one determined owner, and a small island community that refused to back down. It's a strange thing to sit with. A courtroom, a judge, real legal fees, all triggered by a bird doing exactly what birds have done since long before France had courts, or laws, or vacation homes. And yet, that absurdity is exactly why the story spread so far. People didn't just find it funny, they recognized themselves in it, on one side or the other of that same quiet tension between the world we grew up in and the world we move into. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Legal Loopholes for more strange laws and legal battles from around the world. Drop a comment and tell us the strangest law you've ever heard of. We might cover it next. See you in the next video.